My tip this week is going to be about two things. I had a special request from someone to show again fixing up the last stitch of a bind off. Again, I think the best thing is to avoid this, but if you don't want to do that and you want to try this, you can. You work up to the last stitch, and I'm going to slip it over here for just a second so you can see. And what I'm going to do is, here's the stitch below. I'm going to pick up half of that stitch, put the last stitch on it, and I'm going to knit those two together and then pull my bind off, and there you go. Nice and neat. Again, I'd rather avoid this, but you know, if you have to do it, that's one way you can. Now the rest of the tip this week is about something that has come to my attention is a big issue as I've been reviewing lessons, and I'll go into more detail about that, and that is how you read your work. In all of the classes that I teach, I ask that my students tag their work, and this is true of the master's program, in the upper left-hand corner. And that lets me see if you can read your work. And by that, I mean, in this instance, tell the cast-on edge from the bind-off edge. And what I've noticed is that this isn't happening all the time. Now, the cast-on edge, if you're using the long tail, which I do request in my classes, looks like this on one side. That's the smooth side. Looks like this on the wrong side. They look like stitches. That looks like a nice little line. The bind-off edge on stockinette, if you bind off knitwise, is going to produce a chain that is folded towards the right side. If you bind off purlwise, it's going to be the same thing but folded towards the back. Okay, I bound off purlwise here. I get stitches here, and the chain is on the reverse side of the work. Okay, the cast-on edge in garter stitch, that's still that same line at the bottom and a line here. If I bind off in pattern, that is alternating knitting and purling, as in this seed stitch swatch, it produces a chain at the top. Okay, now in seed stitch, here is my cast-on edge, and mainly I can identify it because it doesn't look like a bind-off edge. There it is on that side. Now, why this is important is that if you are seaming things that are square, you have to be able to see where the selvage stitch is. And I've got this right side up. Here's my selvage stitch. Okay, here is the stitch next to it. Looks like little V's. Okay, now if I tag this the wrong way, if I tag this as my upper right and I'm marking the gauge or something, here's my selvage stitch. But notice what is next to it is not a stitch. It's the space between stitches. And if I were seaming this, this would look bad. Now in the master's program in level 2, we have you seam a lot of swatches that are rectangles, and this can be a problem. Now in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to be talking a lot about reading your work. We're going to talk about how to read increases and decreases, cables, lace patterns. Because until you can read your work, it's going to be hard to fix mistakes. It's going to be hard to calculate gauge. It's going to be hard to find your way in a pattern if you don't mark your rows.